ask you, I want to give first a small case scenario. My case scenario is that I just want us to sit back and first celebrate South Africa as one of the leading economies in Africa. And what makes it one of the leading economies in Africa, we've got one of the leading infrastructure in terms of the first world imagination when you are comparing to the rest of Africa and some of the European and also other continents. We also rank among top in terms of our infrastructure, roads, rails, power, energy, and many more. And economically, we are also ranked one of the most powerful countries in Africa in terms of how we're doing things, exports, imports, and obviously our GDP. Even though, you know, there is that word that says that our economy is declining, but we are still ranked among the best in Africa. So that has actually given, or that has painted South Africa as one of the best countries in Africa, and also one of the most competing and leading countries in the global space in the world, in the continent. So my question is that, juniors, looking at how things have been happening in South Africa, our technology or our infrastructure or our seniors, and I mean our seniors including myself and executive and people who are currently running this country. Now you can even put a snapshot on the parliament, you can see the guys are aging, some are 70s, some are 80s. So definitely you guys are needed as soon as yesterday. So are you ready to take over South Africa? When I mean take over South Africa, are you ready to take over the current leadership, run this country, manage this country, improve the infrastructure of this country, improve how the perspective and how people perceive the built-in environment, engineers, QSs, architects, and make it the best country, you know, and make it compete with other countries? Are you guys ready? Can you take over? And if you are convinced that you're ready, how are you going to change the current, how the current regime is doing things, you know, and how are you going to make sure that you take the country, you know, to one of the biggest heights in the global space, mainly economically and in the infrastructural development? That is my question.
Okay, thanks, Marcus. Nothando, we're gonna give you a first hit on this one. As a construction professional, are you ready to take over the reins of the powers that be right now? And if so, how are you going to do things differently from the powers that be? And I'm gonna make it easy for you. Maybe not the country, your industry professionals, your industry leaders. Are you ready to take over from them? And how are you going to do things differently?
Thank you, Tammy, once again. So as a young professional, I'm a firm believer in fresh brains are always better. and I think that's what young professionals in my industry in particular can offer: fresh brains, new thoughts, new thought processes in everything that we do. If you look at the senior professionals in my industry, they mostly have a set ways of doing things. We've been doing this for 30 years, we've been doing this for 40 years, and it has worked. That notion in some instances makes people not see mistakes that are happening, because you can do a mistake for 40 years, and because it has never caused harm, you do not see any necessary need to change the way you're doing things. That's where we come in. We do not have the 40 years behind us, but we've got, like we were talking in the previous question, we've got the technological means, we've got research behind us. And I think if you sit with any young individual, there's Twitter. Twitter is literally a global communication channel for young people. And it's not only used for gossip, as people would say it. If you follow the right people, you get to see what other countries are doing outside of South Africa, and you can actually learn a lot out of it. you can see what they're doing and not only take it as it is, but because we have access to all these technologies like the Internet of Things, we can actually learn how to improve on what other countries are doing, which is what I think that's where we can bring fresh thoughts into South Africa as a whole and not just the industries that we are in. So I believe that's where our importance lies.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks. Nancy, how are you going to do things differently from built environment professionals, especially in the consulting sector? As a junior professional, are you ready to take over from the current crop of people, and how are you going to do it differently?
Yes, right. So yes, definitely I am ready to take over and contribute to building the country and moving, especially from an infrastructure perspective, the country forward. I think I agree with Nothando's point that I think social media especially is a catalyst for knowledge and opportunities, and having the chance to actually, even though you're not sitting in another country, to interact with professionals that are in other countries and learn how they're doing things and see how are they building their buildings. I think as well, though, I'm also a believer in the fundamentals and the I guess sticking to some of the basics. I think I'd just like to put forward that looking at some of the infrastructure challenges that we've got, I think a lot of planning and when one approaches a project, whether it's a refurbishment, it's a new build, kind of planning for, okay, cool, what is going to happen in 5 years' time? Yes, you cannot predict all the technology that will be available, but I think one can actually make the transition easier through whatever solutions we implement today. And I think combining the current modern way of doing things, social media, collaborative planning, and learning from others through conversations like this. Actually, I think we are kind of approaching. We are learning from another in each other in a different way than the way people learned before. But yeah, I think combining the basics together with the modern way of doing things, then in that way, myself and the rest of my colleagues and peers will be able to actually steer the infrastructure sector forward and in the right direction.
Thanks, Nancy. Siseko, the thorn amongst the roses. As a junior in the public sector, a junior built environment professional in the public sector, are you ready? And how are you? You obviously have seen your seniors, how they do things. How are you going to do things differently? Yeah, the floor is yours.
First of all, I think Nothando has actually covered most of the points I was thinking about. But from the government perspective, if you notice, I'm in government sector, but I'm working in private sector. That's exactly the point, that we need to improve the government sector. We know the loopholes that are in government sector. So we end up going to private sector to get that knowledge so that we are more than ready to develop what's already there in government sector. We all know what people say about government employees. We know the whole thoughts that people have about government employees. So the main aim there is for us as youth to change that whole perspective. We work in the private sector to just improve the level of quality that is in government sector to be in the same level as the private sector. So I've noticed that most government junior employees are actually doing that out there. They're trying to improve the level of government quality that's there. Quantity surveyor in government sector should be exactly the same, at the same level as the quantity surveyor in private sector. So that's the gap that we're bridging as the youth. So with that being said, I must say that we are getting there and we are ready to improve what's already there. There's an introduction of WinQF, for example, the software that is used by the professionals in the industry. We're taking that from the private sector to the government sector. There is the Revit model, there is DIMX. We're just improving what's already there in government sector. So I must say that we are ready. We can improve the level of quality and standards that are there. There is a huge problem called corruption, for an example. There's people who are doing investigation. Not everyone who wants to talk about corruption, but the reality is that it's there and it's hindering the development process of government sector. So there are public sector employees who are doing investigations on that, trying to improve, checking the cause, the root cause, where the loopholes are, and what is the strategies that can be adopted to reduce that. So I must say in conclusion that I think we are actually 101%.